All right, we already got Kim Gamrose in tears, sweating, fanning herself. So this is the good time to start this episode as we're jumping into the third episode of the series, getting the most out of professional learning. And today, TJ's on fire, ready to go as we're going to talk about national conferences. He's been chomping at the bit for 2 weeks now, waiting patiently to jump in. So with that, with no further ado, TJ Very and his rant. Go.
You can't just go on a rant. It doesn't work that way. You have to get into the rant. You don't.
Sure.
You can't be called out for a rant. You know what I mean, like saying, "Tell us a joke." Here's the part where I want to start. National conferences are like the hotbed for getting new and innovative information and affirmation for what you're doing. I think we should talk about both of those things for sure. But my number one tip for conference goers, and I just got back from the National ACTE Work-Based Learning Conference. Number one tip is get the app ahead of time. And even if you don't have time to do it on the plane or the train or the car ride, before you get there, pick your sessions. And I think one thing we could do here is talk about how we pick sessions and why we pick sessions. I think that would be useful for the audience. But pick your sessions ahead of time. At least schedule yourself in things that are relevant to you, that you want to learn about, that you want to dive deeper into. Do not wait until you're on the ground at the conference checking in to figure out what sessions you're going to go to, or you're looking for sessions for the next block in the block that you're in, or you're walking around trying to find out where you want to go because of the easel outside of the rooms. The best sessions at any conference are overbooked, and sometimes you can't find a seat. That means you need to schedule your seat ahead of time and make sure you go to sessions that you picked before you got to the conference. I can't stress that enough. It's probably the most important thing I'll say on this show for sure in terms of the preparation prior to a conference, not at it. Maybe that was a rant.
That's true. In particular, that's true of the national conferences. Just because
there's so many people,
so big, and so many sessions too. You know.
So let's talk about how we pick our sessions. I think that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we have any like hacks or things that we always do when we go to a national conference? Because I feel like we touched on it just a little bit last time we talked in the last episode about. I think Mitch, you were talking about how you kind of, especially when you're speaking, you don't just speak and then rush out of there. You're actually going and attending sessions. So do you have any other hacks as far as your professional?
The first hack, what I was going to say is if you're going to a national conference, first look through who's speaking and look for Mitch Weathers. And if he's on the docket, come to that session because it's going to be really good.
That's what I do.
No, I don't know if I have per se a hack if I'm attending a conference. I guess I would just piggyback off what TJ said. To think that you're going to show up even to a small conference and in the moment, you might get lucky and pick something. You're like, wow, that was incredible. I learned so much, or I grew, or I've never considered that. But just taking a few moments ahead of time, reading through and picking out some things. And that, I think that's really smart. So I don't know what the hack might be.
I think your hack you mentioned is to go to the speaker list. If the conference app, again, stressing the use of the app, because if the conference app is set up right, you pick your sessions and it builds your schedule, and then you don't have to worry so much about it. And I like to pick multiple sessions per block to make sure that A, I'm still interested when I get there, and B, I have an alternative if there's not enough room or something like that. But I think if the app also allows you to go to the speaker list, I think that's a super hack. Again, I am looking for Mitch Weathers. I'm looking for nationally recognized leaders. And a lot of times it's not just the keynote, especially big conferences, big national conferences. It's not just the keynote who has important materials, a book author, etc. There's a lot of people who are big names who could have otherwise been the keynote, and they're going to run a
Mhm.
great session. They might have giveaways, resources, books, etc., and they're sprinkled throughout. And you would maybe never know if the app isn't set up to show you who the presenter is at the front page. So what I'm trying to say, just like sometimes on the front page of the app, what you're looking at is the name of the session and might not show the name of the presenter. If you go through the presenter portal, you can find the presenter, and sometimes if they have that notoriety, you know you're going to get a good presentation, and you know you're going to get some research-based and evidence-based strategies that are scalable or transferable versus a lot of the sessions, which are, this is how we do it in my district or my school.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm. And sometimes even and again, this is the larger conferences, but sometimes even the keynote folks are doing workshops as well.
Yeah. They do
And
breakouts, yeah.
so if you are at a keynote and that really resonated with you, seeing the workshops, it's always kind of, I'm shocked. When I was at Learning the Brain, like there was a bunch of workshops happening concurrently when I was speaking that I would have totally gone to. Like I just respect the people who were there, and they were, like you're saying, TJ, they were breakouts, not the keynotes.
Well, to TJ's point too, they're sometimes in the hallways, like some of these giant conference centers that they have, at these national conferences. Sometimes they're not even in a room. Like I can remember going and I just happened to walk by Eric Schenninger, and he was in a hallway on a stage that they had set up, and there were literally 1,000 people that were congregating in this area, and it's, or they have them in these what are the venue halls, right? Or the venue places too. They'll set up stages there. I remember at FETC, one of my presentations was in that space, and I would never have thought of that being a breakout session area. So some of these national conferences, they are very creative as far as where they're placing folks too. And sometimes you have to be, like to TG's point, very very intentional about getting into the schedule, and then also looking at the map and trying to determine where are these folks even speaking, so that you can actually attend in a very creative place.
I think when I'm talking to teachers, it can sometimes feel intimidating going to a conference like that.
For sure.
And when my advice, my hack, I guess there's a couple things I was writing down. A couple things. The first thing is when you look at the list of the speakers, like, how do you get to know them? How do you get to know that if you don't even know who they are? How do you do that? And one easy way is go to social media. If you're a LinkedIn person, go to LinkedIn. If you're an Instagram person, go to Instagram. And a lot of times you can kind of get their vibe by what they're posting. And maybe it's that they don't post at all. Mitch Weathers.
I was
Maybe.
just going to say, this is a partial hack, everybody.
Maybe they don't post anything. But maybe then look and see who they're connected to. So I post all the time, and I post with Mitch Weathers, and you're like, oh, he's just like Kim Gamarose. Oh my gosh, they're friends. Oh, okay. Well, I like her, so I for sure am gonna like him.
There's a caveat there, right, Mitch? Just like
He's
Kim.
just like Kim Gamarose, except he doesn't post on social. Everything else tracks. I just draft all of you guys. You just tag me. You look, I'm on social.
I'm tracking on it though, Kim. I agree. And a lot of the conference apps will actually have the handles below the speaker. And I mean, this may be a bias, but if I click on your LinkedIn right now and you've got nothing and you're presenting at a national conference, and like you didn't even say, hey, I'm going to be presenting at a national conference, I'm skeptical of that, quite frankly. And or like on LinkedIn, you can even see the stuff that people like and repost. And so even if Mitch isn't doing that, he's liking my stuff and reposting it. So at least he's active. It's the active person on social, I think, especially LinkedIn for me anyway, that I want to get to know them and understand that they have something to say or something that they think is worth saying. Then that makes it more of a benefit or advantageous for me to hear.
Yeah. My second hack that I was thinking of too, especially if you're like, again, new to this world, is I know the tendency is to get with your people and to go together and to all of your sessions and plan out your days together. But at the same time, like, I know you want to be with your people. It feels really good to be with them. But my biggest piece of advice is you do what's best for you. I want you to choose sessions where you're going to get the most out of it. And I think that was, I mean, I'll never forget. I was at a conference where I was super uncomfortable doing that. But I told myself, like, Kim, do this for you. You spent money, like, out of your own teacher salary to be here. Choose something where you know you're going to walk away and you're going to feel full and fulfilled because of this. And so I know the tendency is to just like be with your teacher besties and do the same, but you do you. I think that's like my other piece of advice.
And can I piggyback on that though, Kim, in light of your first hack, or saying like how intimidating some of these large and they really can be. I think that's in particular if you're going alone. So try to go with colleagues, because then learning as a group, even if you're choosing your own things, but you see this all the time, like colleagues sitting around talking about sharing what they learned. I went to this session, you went to this session, or we stick together so we can kind of collectively be in the same room, or we get strategic and say, hey, we want to learn about SEL, and there's 3 sessions on SEL happening during this block. You go here, you go here,
Right.
And it just seems to be a lot more fun. I know that was my experience when I was in the classroom. When
Piggyback off that, so we had a bunch of people from our district go to one of these national conferences, and so there was 4 principals, like myself and 3 others, that we built a Google Doc, and then we go to different sessions, and then we would throw in like all the different resources and the links and the slideshows, and we just built essentially a national conference go-to document that we all had access to by the end of the 3 days that we were there, and we just then shared it with other people within the district, and so that way they got the information. So we kind of did, to Mitch's point, a team up, but we didn't say, okay, we're all together, we're all friends, we're going to hang out with each other, and we're going to all be going to each of the same sessions. No, it was like, okay, what are the sessions that we're all kind of working with as far as our initiatives? What are some of our passions? What are we curious about? Like, that was our lens. And then based on that, oh, you know what? Mitch went to that. I wanted to go there, but it was actually at the same time I'm going to this other one. Well, at least I got the resources and the major topics and some of these other things that were discussed. So that way I didn't feel like I missed out on that opportunity.
I would also say, in terms of the group that you're going with, and that is a good idea. At the same time, the number one reason why I go to national conferences is to meet interesting people. The number 2 is to learn from sessions. They're close, but they're not tied. The number 1 is to meet interesting people. It could be because they're presenting on a topic and I want to meet that person. But if you don't exchange information, if you're at a 2 to 3 day conference and you don't exchange information, I would say with at least 5 people, that's a failure with a capital F. If you are still connected to the same people after the conference who you were before you went, that's a failure in my mind. That's not making the conference last beyond the conference and the connections that you can make. Even if it's just you exchanged information, you have the person's LinkedIn and you connected on LinkedIn, and now you can DM them and connect that way. I'm not necessarily just saying phone number to phone number, but if you didn't make 5 new connections when you were there, and I'm trying to make dozens of new connections, if it's only on social media, dozens while I'm there. And this conference I was just at, there were a lot of people with that same mentality because they had their Blink or their LinkedIn QR code up and ready when they wanted to connect. And so they knew also that we were going to be on social media, and that's the way we were going to connect after the conference. Failure with a capital F.
TJ, how much coffee have you had today? That's the big question.
I don't drink coffee, Mitch. No, I had 1 cup of coffee.
This is a natural high. This is
okay. I'm going to jump in there with, I think, yes, networking, meeting people outside of your own district and school is important. Even if you're not like trying to build your social network, it's still build your professional network. It's not about, even though you're connecting on probably LinkedIn, if it's not social, but wherever, Instagram, whatever. But I would also say as an accountability factor for yourself, if you're in a session and it's resonating, or a keynote, and that person has written a book or something that's in the bookstore there, go buy it. One, it's supporting them. And I'm not just, trying to be self-promoting for all of us because we all have books. It's now it's going with you though. You get back on the plane or you're driving home, it goes into your classroom. Like it extends the learning beyond the conference. Not to say it has to happen, but I think there's something to be said if it's really resonating. Grab the book and continue your learning.
But to TJ's point, when I had the app, I actually used my library of books to determine a lot of times where I was going. So authors were kind of the number one on my list as far as, okay, I know what they're about. I've read their book, or I've seen their book. I'm interested in their book, and I want to go hear them speak. That's typically number one on my list. Sorry, Kim, you were about to say something.
No, I was going to say, and go talk to them afterwards. Go talk to the speaker afterwards. So often after being up there presenting, they're craving that connection piece afterwards. They want to hear your takeaways. They want to see you at that booth while you're grabbing your book. And I mean, more often than not, if you're grabbing their book, they're going to give you like 2, 3, 4 other books that are similar but different that you've got to also be thinking that are next in your list. And then I was also, Josh, when you were talking about that Google Doc, the shared Google Doc, I was thinking, if I'm an instructional coach, right? And there's a team of us, because so often there's like a group of instructional coaches that will go to these national conferences together and be tasked with coming back and sharing information. Well, I love the idea of that Google Doc, but then I was thinking, district wide, what does that really look like when you're back? And so if you are an instructional coach, more than likely you have your website for your entire district. And where are you housing that information, and how can you push that out in a meaningful and intentional way? Is it through your induction program? And do you have a library of these different professional development like slide decks or takeaways or visual supports or links to get more freebies? Like, what does that look like for your district? And I think just get your wheels kind of turning and spinning on that if you're an instructional coach listening, because it isn't just you that gets the information. And what are you doing with it afterwards to support people, right? Can they go there? Your new teachers especially, could they go to someplace on that website and go, oh, this isn't working in my classroom. I think I need more of this. And then all of a sudden there's like this thing that comes to life there for them. I think that's really, really powerful stuff.
So to add to that, Kim, so for instance, we went to a conference, Matt Miller, love Matt Miller, good friend. So he does a lot of tech stuff. Our media specialist and our lead tech person for our campus went and saw him speak. From that, they created a newsletter, and they were pushing out resources and things that he discussed during that session. But then they also found ways to then post it throughout the campus. So they would have it in the staff lounge, and they would have it literally in the restrooms, like these little posters that they would create. And it would usually have like a prompt or a question, and then go to Matt Miller's website or a resource that he gave up for free, whatever. And that was the starting point. Well, then that happened every week. So it started with Matt Miller in that session, but because they were trying to disseminate the information that they felt was valuable for the staff, it then turned into something that was just a byproduct of, okay, this is happening every week. And then these posters, they would switch up every month. And so it was just always about technology and how to implement it, or a resource or a strategy that they found. So it started at the conference, but then it kind of morphed into something more as far as how they were getting information out to everybody else.
So good. So good.
It's also another one of my like rules. The first rule obviously was the connection, but another one of my rules is implementation within 2 weeks after the conference. So it's nice. A lot of times conferences end up being theory and learning and feel good. You traveled, you got to see what other school districts are doing. You got to hear from an author, a keynote. It's inspirational, but it doesn't have an impact in the classroom. If you're a teacher and you're learning strategies from a Matt Miller, for example, implement within 2 weeks of returning, take the risk and implement, and maybe even invite a colleague or a supervisor in to see you using that strategy to give you feedback, so you have another set of eyes on it. We've talked about that on this show. If you're a school leader and you're learning about an initiative at either the school or district level, assemble the task force within 2 weeks. That doesn't mean you're going to initiate some new thing with your school or your program, but initiate that task force that's going to learn more about it and do the deeper dive within 2 weeks. Something should happen after you get back from the conference within 2 weeks that's going to change and improve the environment and the conditions in which we teach and learn. If not, it's not probably going to do anything. It's still somewhat useful and it jazzed people up and we learned and we experienced it together, but that doesn't necessarily have an impact. And if you don't do it, it's a failure with a capital F. I couldn't say that without laughing.
I'm glad I
Are
made this
there,
banner.
for-
It works for
for
so many reasons.
People tuning in that are curious or maybe haven't gone to these larger national events, are there any that we recommend that you've been to that really landed?
Well, it kind of
Yeah.
depends on the topic, right? I mean, if you're a middle level educator, like AMLE has a bunch of stuff. Talking about like technology. I think I threw it out last time. Texas has like their statewide one, but then FETC is like that national one, and that's gigantic. I know the last one I went to was in New Orleans, and the conference center was bigger than I could ever imagine. And the amount of speakers talking about like big name folks, I mean, there were so many people there that are typically keynote speakers at other smaller events, and they were just breakout sessions. So, I mean, like the amount of folks, even the technology ones, it's not even just technology. Like they were hitting topics, instructional strategies, all the way to, restorative practices to social emotional learning. I mean, like they were hitting the whole gamut, even though it was a technology conference. So even if you're looking at that as like, oh, that's a topic that maybe I'm not interested in, to TJ's point, if you go in and start looking at who's speaking and what is being spoken on, you'll probably be surprised at how many things they're actually covering in that space.
And if I was a teacher or a school leader, I would not limit myself to my lane. So, for example, the National Principals Conference that gets held by NASSP,
Yep.
and the national conference that's put on by NAESP, those conferences are good at every level. So that's not because they're national principals conferences. I wouldn't limit those to principals. I would send teachers and teacher leaders to those conferences to learn about initiatives, to learn about school-based strategies, district strategies. And the same goes for instructional stuff. If you're a teacher and it seems like more of a teacher-driven professional development conference, that does not mean that school leaders shouldn't go to that. You can learn a ton from sessions being put on by teachers about what the classroom should look like and additional resources for your teachers by being at those conferences. And it's been said before, but I want to say something else about this later in the show, but form a team. If you're a school leader, bring 3 or 4 of your teacher leaders. Be intentional about what people are going to learn at the conference ahead of time. And again, there's more to say about that, but for sure, you can go to national conferences at any level.
TJ, wasn't there one that you went to not too long ago in Seattle? Was that a national conference?
Yeah, NCCE is the largest technology conference in the Pacific Northwest. And here's the thing, and that conference was awesome. That conference had so many different strands. I was there talking about CTE and work-based learning, and they had a pre-conference. We should talk about pre and post conferences. They had a pre-conference that was a CTE summit, and I got to do a roundtable there, and I also got to sit on a panel. And just a note, because I thought of this while I was saying the roundtable and the panel, check the formats. Sometimes it's a 60-minute presentation with roundtables. Sometimes it's more of a lecture style and everybody's in rows. Sometimes it's a roundtable that's going to happen 4 or 5 sessions. Sometimes there's a panel of people talking. I like to really go to like a variety of different formats. Lately in the presentation style, I like roundtables and I like panels because I get to interact with the audience, take questions on the panel, and it's more intimate with the roundtable with, like, let's say 8 to 10 people, and you can really drive a conversation versus just presenting.
Mhm.
I like your idea, TJ, about like having your team go too, because I think it's very like you need to be strategic about it, both before the event, but then also to your point of making sure that when we land feet back on the campus, that we have something in place in the next couple of weeks. Because as we know, school life is going to get crazy and it's going to get busy and then it's going to fall to the wayside. And then it's essentially a waste, or to your point, a failure with a capital F for that team. And so, like, if you're going to put in time, if you're going to put in money, resources into going to any event, if it's local or if it's national, then you better have a good plan put in place and a team that's passionate about putting it in place once you get back with that information. And then, TJ, I don't know if you want to talk about the pre-conference. I did one not too long ago. It was last summer in California for the MTSS, and I really liked the pre-conference setup. Obviously, the conference was great, but it was a smaller group of folks that were there, obviously, that came in early, that were, again, very intentional about like selecting what they're going to be talking about. I got to do the language of behavior and talking about student behavior and strategies and whatnot, but like there was a good group of folks. There's probably 1/3 of the conference that came in early for the pre-conference just to learn a day early before getting into the big keynote and then going into hundreds and hundreds of different sessions to choose from.
Yeah, typically the conferences have strands, and you can usually pick from those strands. But then the pre and post are even more focused than that. They've narrowed down to one or two or three things. And so I would definitely think about the pre and post conference focus areas. If that's why you're going to that conference in the first place, take a look at the pre-con, because really it's not that much more expensive. It's an add-on fee, and you're really maybe paying for one more night in a hotel and a few meals. It's not an extra plane ticket. It's not an extra registration, and you might be able to get more bang for your buck on the implementation side. And something, Josh, that you said I think is really, really important is if you're sending your team, send them with a purpose, send them with an intention. Don't just pick somebody and say, go to this conference. Like, if I'm talking more to school leaders, if you're a teacher and you were selected to go to a conference, use that app to become focused on something, or even ask the administrator, is there something you're sending me to this? Is there something in particular that you want me to get from it? But if you're the school leader and you're sending a team, I think somebody said it, maybe we send people to different sessions, but we should know that focus before we get on the airplane. Like, we should have a team focus of what we want to learn. If you've selected a certain teacher to go to a conference, let them know what you want them to bring back. Again, if you don't, it just becomes inspiration and not impact. I would say that's failure with a lowercase f.
Okay, I have a question then. So let's say I'm a teacher, and number one, I mean, it's two parts, I guess. The first thing is like, where do I go to find out what these conferences are? Like, what's available to me? That's part one. And then I guess part two is really, once I find it, how do I go to my principal and say, I want to go? Question mark? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do we navigate that? So that's up to you guys. You tell me. I'm the teacher. Tell me.
Well, I did that as an art teacher. There was a conference in my state. I chose in state because I felt like that was something that was probably going to get approved if I could, again, deem that it was important and for something that would be beneficial not only for my classroom but for the campus. And so that was my viewpoint going to have that conversation. I first had that with my assistant principal because they were in charge of my department. And then, of course, that had to be approved by the principal. And so that was the conversation of, okay, I have the event. I have how much it's going to cost as far as registration, how much it's going to cost as far as all the extras, and then as far as, okay, what is going to be approved, right? So is all of it going to be covered as far as meals, travel, registration, all the extras, or is it just they're going to cover registration and the rest of it is on top of me, right? Are they going to provide a subcode? These are all the logistics that you kind of have to figure out prior to having that meeting, so it doesn't feel like you're coming in shooting from the hip. Like, you got to make sure that there's a plan in place, similar to what we were talking about before, as far as pitching it to your admin. So lot of times it was a yes if they had the budget, but there were plenty of times I asked and it was a no. So it was just a matter of, okay, well, our campus doesn't have that in the budget. You can go to the district and ask as far as the art director for the district to see if they have it within their budget. And so I had conversations with her. And then sometimes it was like, you know what, we're on a rotation. And so right now I have 4 people selected from the district to go to a conference. Looking at it, you might be eligible the following year. We just have to make a determination of who's going to get those funds each year. So you just have to understand that there's certain requirements and things that might be a limitation budget wise. Sometimes they'll be like, we don't have it in the budget, but if you want to go on your own, feel free to do so. We can provide a subcode for you during that time. So it's just a matter of understanding what's available to you. As far as administrator, it was a similar process. It was just I was reporting to someone different, right? So I'm talking to the director of secondary schools about that versus talking to my principal.
And I like that option for teachers too, to know like, okay, you can even bring that to your principal, right? You could say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I logistically, what I was kind of, thinking is going to look like or whatever. And then it could even be, and maybe we go to the coordinator or the director or whoever it is. Maybe we can ask them too. And then the principal goes, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Because I think as a principal, I'm speaking to elementary school principals, especially, they feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to try to figure out the funding piece when it really could just be, okay, there's funding. Maybe we can go to this other person at the district office and they can support us and help us figure this out together.
Yeah. And you never know where that pot of money is, right? Sometimes you can pull it from PTO or PTA's groups that are willing to, have a account set up for professional development for teachers. Like there's a lot of ways, or grants too. I know of plenty of people that are really passionate, right? I am invested in PBIS. I want it on my campus. I want to go to this conference, and they'll put in for a grant and they get the money, right? So then it's not a matter of a principal saying yes or no about funding at that point. It's just a matter of getting the logistics of the subcode. Well, that's probably going to be a yes, because you've done all the front work to get the funds for that. So sometimes you do have to be creative, especially if you run into a wall with funding as far as a no of, okay, it doesn't mean no forever. It's just no for this one individual. And there's other opportunities that you might be able to find a scholarship or grant somewhere else.
When possible, teachers tie it to existing initiatives that are happening in the district or the school. Make that connection. It definitely greases the skids a little bit for you in terms of getting that funding or sub coverage.
That's a really important point. And then Josh's point about, that's a great technical tip, preparing the budget. It's the first question any administrator is going to ask is, well, but how much does it cost?
Right.
And so knowing the cost ahead of time, putting together registration, meals and incidentals and airfare, all of that, lodging, that should be, and really, like, it's probably going to be somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000. Like, it's not that expensive to send somebody. Here's a couple of other technical pieces. Don't ask in January to go to a February conference. I mean, this is for your teachers, Kim.
Yes.
It's probably not, you just found out about it in January. It's happening in February, and you go to your principal. I'm not saying don't do that. It's just probably going to be a no. It wasn't in the budget, and you've got a 30-day turnaround to try to figure that out. That said, typically the district has set aside slots for some conferences. Like, we're going to send 3 people to the national middle level conference. And so they don't name the people. Generally, they don't name the people in the budget. They just name the slots so they have the money set aside. So with the proper amount of lead time, like let's say in budgeting season, April, May, you want to go to a conference in the next school year that you found out about this school year, that is the time to say, is there money earmarked for somebody to go to this conference? If it is, can I be one of the people? If it isn't, can we earmark some of this in the budget for me to be able to attend this next year? To Josh's point, here's what it's going to cost. To Mitch's point, here's why I think I should go.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Well, and they need to understand too that we were talking about national kind of umbrella, but there's also a lot of times the conference will be very strategic about the topic, right? So we kind of mentioned it earlier. I think I said MTSS, PBIS, SEL. I went to a restorative practices conference before where that was the only topic, right? There were subtopics that were discussed in every session, but that was overarching. You are going there to learn about that. So to Mitch's point, right? If that's an initiative that we're heavy in or we're trying to start, well, obviously I'm going to go and try and get us to get a group of people there to learn about that so we can get this thing going, that we can get it started on our campus. Or if we've hit a wall and we're stuck in something, right? Maybe PBS, we've gotten the first stage off the ground, but now, we're trying to get to every single classroom and for whatever reason it's not happening. Well, let's find some PD for that. Let's get a group of people to go and learn about that specific topic. And obviously when you're looking for a proposal, that's going to go a long way if it fits the initiative of your campus. All right.
So we've talked about why to go and what's there and how to bring it back. But I think we should also discuss who should go. Because conferences are a professional benefit. Going to a conference is a professional benefit, whether you're a school leader or a teacher or at any level. It could be the technology folks in the technology department going to ISTE to learn about hardware. It could be that the kitchen manager has a professional conference where they can go and learn about equipment. There's all kinds of different, HR conferences, etc. Everybody at every level, but it's a benefit and it's a professional advantage. And I personally don't think it should just be doled out to anybody. It should be available for the people who are the most positive, who are reinforcing the initiatives that have been mentioned before, who have an impact at the local level. And we wrote about this in Invest in Your Best. One investment in your best teachers is to send them to a conference. If somebody's the grumpy, has a negative impact on the school culture, I'm not spending $3,000 on that person to go to a conference for any reason. If there's somebody who is struggling in an area and they have a strong will to get better, that's different, right? Maybe there's a conference to send them to so that they can become a stronger teacher in accordance with a plan that you've set. But I want the positive, most impactful, best people with the greatest mindset who are going to get the most out of it to go to these conferences for the higher ticket price than the people who I'm worried about even whether or not they're doing a good job locally.
And I want them to take action afterwards. And I like what you said about the 2-week time frame. I love that. But like in your heart, that these people, investing in them is going to pull you all forward together. That is what I want, right? I think that having that vision of knowing that there will be action taking place after we go or after they go, I think that's really important to think about.
Yeah, I don't want them just on the beach. I don't want them sipping mimosas on the beach and enjoying their day instead of being in the PD session. So
a mimosa.
Yeah, it's a great drink.
And one more question for Mitch. So Mitch, let's say I come to the conference and you're the keynote and I buy your book from the bookstore, which I was going to add should be also signed. Like I get my book signed. Like I always, like if I'm at a conference and there's somebody there, that's another reason for me to look in the app. If I see Josh Stamper is going to be at that conference, I'm bringing my Josh Stamper book with me. If I see Kim Gamrose is going to be at that conference, I'm packing my Kim Gamrose book because I'm going to get that signed while I'm at the conference. Even if
with the fancy paper, Mitch and DJ, is that what's happening with the fancy paper?
I'm getting signatures all over the paper. But I'm going to the conference with the book, or I'm going to buy it in a library, or a bookstore, I should say. Which a lot of times there's funds for that too, available. Like Title II funds for that. But a lot of times on top of it, like I see the keynote, Mitch does 60 minutes for us. I even go to his breakout session. But I'm thinking we need to have Mitch Weathers come back to the district and do some PD. How do I approach that? Do I just DM you? What would you say is the best way to try to figure out how to get you to do that PD back locally for us? If I see somebody at either a breakout or a keynote and actually get the best deal, how would I approach it?
I mean, if I'll just speak from my own experience and preference, is when someone just comes up and says, "Hi," that really resonated. I know it would resonate with our district or our school. How do we get you there? And then it's a simple, we can chat on LinkedIn. Here's more than likely, here's an email. And then usually what happens is then it's handed off. Someone else, like at the district level, will reach out to me and say, "Hey, so-and-so, they really are excited about whatever XYZ you talked about at the conference. And we have this bank of days. We host our professional learning summit every fall or whatever." And then it goes from there. But I would encourage everybody, like we all know and have felt, the imposter syndrome or intimidation. Somebody's in the room, you're like, "Holy cow, that's so-and-so," or whatever. Just go meet people. Just go meet them. Thank them. They're working hard just like you're working hard, trying to make this thing better all the way around for kids and for teachers. And most of the time, they're just so grateful. Because if you watch everybody go to that keynote, and when they're done, most people don't say anything. They just leave. And not that everyone can go and say thanks, because that wouldn't work either. But it's interesting if you're on the other side of that one. We've all been in that situation where someone just comes up and says thanks, or that resonated, or will you sign my book? How do we get you all those things? Just find the person.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
All right. Well, I think it's a great way to wrap this up. And just a reminder, this is a four-part series, and we're going to flip it. So Mitch was talking about being the presenter. And if you have ever thought that you have something that is valuable and something that you would like to bring to a conference, or it could be at your district, we're going to be talking about that next. So as a whole, this is getting the most out of your professional learning, and we're going to be talking about you as the presenter at PD, and we're super excited to kind of flip the script on that one. But if you have any questions about anything that we've discussed in this series so far, make sure that you're reaching out, throw it in the comments. Mitch, actually, someone put in the comments in Spotify, I just realized this, that they are interested about your book. So I'm going to hold on to that for the mailbag episode, so we can address that, because it's a good question. But if you have any questions, you can throw it in YouTube, you can throw it in Spotify, in the comment section. We'll pull those up for the mailbag, which will be at the conclusion of this topic. And we cannot wait to see you again next week.